Welcome back to Harvard. Remember the RNC's autopsy report that basically described the enormous hole Republicans had to dig out of with regard to minorities, women, and the candidates they recruit? Well, that report looks tame compared to today's report by the College Republican National Committee on how the GOP lost the youth vote last November. It starts out, quote, "Our research finds both a dismal present situation and an incredible opportunity for turning the GOP brand around." I guess when you've hit dismal, the only possible positive spin is that there's room for improvement. You can't get down any further. Well, it sums up focus group research that shows, quote, "We've become the party that will pat you on your back when you make it, but won't offer a hand to help you get there." And Latino voters tend to think the GOP couldn't care less about them. These are all in the focus group comments. And when young voters identified by pollsters as winnable, even those that voted for Obama were asked, what words come to mind when you heard Republican Party? The responses were brutal, closed-minded, racist, rigid, old-fashioned. Sam Stein covers politics for the Huffington Post, and Joy Reid's the managing editor of the Griot. Both are, of course, MSNBC now veteran contributors. Thank you both. And I tell you, sometimes I wonder why you have to pay for a report. I want to start with Sam. I mean, sometimes, you know, what's today's date? You're going to put out a report and have somebody come back with the information, or, you know, we do know that the Republican Party, based upon its performance in the last campaign, blew it with the young people, meaning people in their 20s and late teens.
Yeah, and this report is sort of, as you said, stating what is now the obvious. Mitt Romney lost by 5 million votes, they estimated, among voters under 30 years old, which is a huge amount to make up for any candidate. And the conclusions here are pretty self-explanatory. The Republican Party, as you mentioned in one of these highlights, is there to help to accept people when they've made a success out of themselves, but won't help people make a success out of themselves. And it goes through a litany of the data points to show that there's image problems, but more importantly, I thought, was that the main takeaway is that there's a real policy problem, that there is no proactive policy that the Republican Party has introduced that would captivate a young voter's attention at this point in time. And I think that is the bigger issue facing the GOP, is what can they put together proactively as opposed to something they can change communicatively.
Well, let's talk about the reality, because I think the voters are smart. Joy, and Sam, I always assume rationality. I don't think voters are driven by some sort of unclear charisma. Even with Reagan, and Kennedy, it was focused in reality, and FDR. All the charismatic presidents had clear messages that people clearly understood. So let me start with Joy in this. Same-sex marriage, big differential with people under 30. Let's be honest about it. I mean, you're African-American, I'm not, but I tell you, my sense is you can almost predict a difference in attitude on ethnic issues based upon age. People, 70-year-old white people, I'll bet they voted overwhelmingly against Obama. They didn't even know why they did it. They just did it. Whereas kids in their 20s said, what's the issue about ethnicity or race? And they were open to it, in fact, maybe thrilled by it. So I think that these issues, I think, are real. I don't think it's about PR or organization. I think it's about basic values becoming different as you get in the younger groups. Your thoughts, your experience.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, you have a president who sort of represents Generation X values, right? He listens to hip hop, he listens to Jay-Z. He kind of signifies to a younger voter like their cool uncle, right? So it's difficult to tell.
Well, he also sings Al Green, so he's not that cool. And Al Green,
so he's got a little bit of both, and he's just on the cusp of Gen X, right? But I think to younger voters, especially when you look at how culture has sort of metastasized across race. So hip hop is not just an African-American form of music. White kids are listening to it too. So the same cultural cues work for white and black younger voters. And when you have the Republican Party essentially have a huge, over-the-top anti-reaction to the election of this president, where everything they've got is thrown into hating this president, denying that his election was valid, throwing everything they've got at him, you're also reacting against the whole cultural norm that defines younger people.
Yeah, I think so.
Younger people look at this overreaction by Republicans, who generally are older and whiter, and they see a generational problem there too. They're like your mean dad. Obama's like your cool uncle. It's not hard to figure out which side young people are going to pick.
I'm wondering when hip-hop's going to get to my little station. I listen to 60s on 6 on XM. It may not break through my brain yet. Anyway, the College Republicans report also cites bumbling 2012 candidates for the party's misfortune. Quote, "It's not hard to find examples of Republican missteps in the 2012 election that enhanced this brand challenge, where the infamous 47% remarks made by Romney or the legitimate rape comments made by Republican Todd Akin in his Senate campaign. Then there were numerous examples of Republican Republican leaders making statements that were terribly out of step with where voters, particularly young voters, stand. Sam, jump on that, because I think words do matter, because they convey ideas, and ideas convey policy and values. I believe the voter is rational. They're voting for what they believe in, what they connect with. And I think that the Romney, not an evil guy, seemed like at least a square, as we used to say. You know, a guy not connecting at all. And then all these platitudinous things about same-sex and abortion, nobody really believed him on those. He just said what he had to say.
The words
because he believed it, too.
The words matter to the extent that they echo or confirm a policy standpoint. And I want to point out two things. One was gay marriage. For the young generation, this really is a civil rights issue. If you are against LGBT causes, it is tantamount to almost bigotry. And that's because a lot of young people, myself included, happen to know people who are gay or are related to people who are gay. And it's just a facet of our lives that the elder generations have not yet experienced and never will. But that's the future, and the Republican Party probably has to understand that. The second thing, and it's a little bit harder to explain, is health care. But I think for the Latino community especially, health care reform was a big deal. It was a promise to move up the economic ladder because health care can be such a burdensome economic cost.
Why did it work, Sam, you know so much, why do you think it worked particularly well with the Latino community, which includes, by the way, people who have been here 200 or 300 years? I mean, not just people that got here this generation.
It's an economic issue for them. It is a matter of survival economically as well. And listen, I think part of the problem was not just that the Republican Party was anti-Obamacare. It was that they never filled in the gap about what they would replace it with.
Exactly.
And so what we had a month ago was Eric Cantor putting out a bill, a very, sensible conservative bill that would have expanded high-risk pools using funds from preventative health care in Obamacare. It was just transferring money. He couldn't get it through the Republican House. He had to pull that off the floor. I think that's a huge signal to the Latino community, to other communities, that the Republican Party isn't putting out a platform that they can attach to.
And Chris,
here's a takeaway, Joy. Here's a takeaway. I like to give people takeaways on this show. You know, it's a teaching role here we have. Look at this, 18 to 29-year-old voting's blocked. Look how it's going. They haven't always voted different than older people. In 1980, for example, Ronald Reagan won 59% of the youth vote to Walter Mondale's 40%. That spread reflected the overall national vote. Same thing, same exact vote. And by 2008, the youth vote had pulled far away from the national vote in supporting Obama. That year, the president got 66% of the youth vote, going up to age 28 to McCain's 32, putting the president's success with young voters 13 points ahead of the overall national vote. So, Joy, this disconnect isn't endemic. It's not historic. The inability of the Republican Party to reflect the views and news of the people in their 20s and late teens is new and a big problem for them.
Yeah, no, every president's had it different. You know, with Kennedy, it was also this politics of aesthetic, right? He represented that generational change. Reagan represented the politics of assertiveness. And I think that there was a point at the 80s when the younger voter wanted an assertive president, somebody who could stick out America's chest again, and that really appealed to younger people. So you're absolutely right. The Republican Party has not always had the problem. And Reagan was a much older man, but he could still channel, maybe because he had that Hollywood background, something that appealed to a younger person and to even some Democrats who voted for him. But, I mean, if we go back just for 1 second, because policy does matter, too. You talked about health care. The Obama folks and the Democrats did a lot of things wrong when it came to selling Obamacare, but the one thing they did right was that they put the parts of it early that appealed to younger people. Being able to stay on your parents' insurance, I think Republicans underestimated just how appealing that would be, not just to the moms and the dads, but to the kids. If you're a college graduate, not having to worry about that and being able to stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26 was huge. And also the ability to get things like free mammograms and other sort of preventive care. For young women, when they graduated from college, that sort of void you go into on health care if you don't have a job that gives you benefits, those things really appeal to younger people, to women, and to minorities. And so that's one of the reasons Obamacare has stuck in the younger communities and among minority voters.
You're amazing. You talk faster than me. You're as smart as me, or more smarter. And everybody I bump into says you're great, so you're unbelievable. Joy, you are something. And Sam, you're great, too, I guess.
Oh,
thank you. Just kidding, Sam.
Appreciate it.
You're catching on. You're really good. I can't even figure out your politics, Sam. And I've been on with you maybe 100 times now, and I can't figure you out yet. I think I figured out Joy. She's like me. I haven't figured you out. Up next was Virginia's